Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. How cool was that intro? Welcome to the Roll20 review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website Roll20.net. For this video, I'll be reviewing the, can you guess it, Stranger Things D&D Starter Kit, designed by Wizards of the Coast and adapted by Roll20. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my videos, consider supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Charles, and Crazy Pat. And gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marco Stead, Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Alxi, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. I, like many geeks, am a big fan of Stranger Things. Absolutely adore the show. I think it's amazing. It hits all those nice 80s flavorings, and obviously the series very famously opens up with a bunch of kids playing tabletop D&D in a basement, which is amazing. And I think this is a really cool collaboration that Wizards of the Coast has done with Netflix to produce an official Stranger Things boxed starter set. Now, as a starter set, it means it is similar to the Lost Mine of Fandelver, which has a shortened version of both the player rules and Dungeon Master's Guide, mostly player handbook, maybe like a third of the content, enough to play a game of D&D as well as having pre-made character sheets. It's designed like the Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set, which released back in like 2014, which was the big first thing for 5e, to get new people to play Dungeons & Dragons, to kind of ease them into the rule set and that world and everything. I think this does an okay job at that. It is not nearly as extensive or as good of an adventure, and part of the problem is that the Lost Mine of Fandelver is still one of the best adventures for Dungeons & Dragons in general. Like, obviously it's not as long or detailed or complex as the rest of the published 5th edition adventures, but it is still a very, very good adventure. I mean, every single person you talk to when you ask, what should I start for a new group for D&D, 90% of the answers are going to be Lost Mine of Fandelver. It's that good. It's very good. So the problem is this one has to compare to that because it's also a starter kit, and it doesn't compare very favorably in that regard. The adventure is decently fun. It's very, very short, very simple, but it has a lot of fun Stranger Things flavoring. You literally go to the Upside Down at one point. You meet like the brave princess or whatever, and you know it's got very fight the Demogorgon. Very literal commonalities between the show that I think will make it very fun for fans. Hardcore D&D people, it probably has a lot. You can get this as a collector's item, but obviously if you're getting the Roll20 module, you don't really need to. That's not something you collect. So in terms of playing it, it's okay. It's basically okay. And I'm going to go through it. I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts at the beginning, but it's not. If you're expecting something along the level of Lost Mine of Fandelver, it's a massive disappointment compared to that. It is not nearly as extensive or interesting as Lost Mine. I do think it is better than what you might imagine a licensed tie-in would be. I think it does do a very good job from there, but ultimately it falls well short of Lost Mine of Fandelver in terms of comparing starter sets. Let's look at what you get with the content. Which the nice thing is, the MSRP for the Stranger Things starter kit is like $24.99, which I think is where the original starter set, Lost Mine of Fandelver, and I say original meaning 5th edition, starter set started off and priced. It's obviously fallen in the years since. But the Roll20 version is $14.99, which is really nice. It's a cheaper price point. Granted, I think that's probably what it comes out to on Amazon, but I do like that instead of using the MSRP, which they have done in the past, it is actually a cheaper discounted price for the Roll20 version. So the Roll20 module comes with the full starter set rulebook, which means you get notes on how combat works, kind of what D&D is, how to play it, how the D20 system works, how the ability checks work, traveling, resting, equipment, loot. You also get all of these spell cards. I'm actually going to break it down numerically in terms of what you get, but you do get the full starter set content. So in other words, the starter set for Lost Mine came with the Lost Mine Adventure as well as not really a book, it was a paper kind of booklet that came with enough rules to let you play through uh, the full game of Lost Mine, and this one does a similar thing. It's basically, I believe, the exact same copy-pasted content. So you get the full starter set rulebook. The adventure is the hunt for the Thessal Hydra, which includes, for Roll20, two 10-foot square battle maps. Damn it, Mike, why'd you have to draw in 10-foot squares? You know we use 5-foot squares in 5e. With 5-foot subdivisions, so you'll just have the tiny tokens there, but it does all work correctly. With tokens and dynamic lighting, one blank random battle map, one alphabetized token page. This is all very standard if you've bought a official product on the marketplace for Roll20, an official D&D product, you'll get a lot of those. But if not, you do get those, so I'm mentioning them. 5 pre-made level 3 character sheets, which are actually pretty cool, and I'll get into those later. Over 50 spells as player handout cards. I've reviewed, I think, all of the Roll20 official D&D modules, and I don't think a single one of them, unless they did this after the fact, ever included every single spell as a player handout. And this is really interesting. I almost thought it seemed superfluous because you get them in the compendium here, but then I realized this is actually the player's handbook that has all the spells in here. So what I'm looking at right here is the compendium with the player's handbook, which I think you have to purchase the player. It gets tricky because I've gotten a lot of these as press copies, but I believe you only get the standard rules document that everybody has access to, but if you actually purchase the player's handbook, you have this kind of stuff in your compendium. Well, if you don't have that, which you might not, because if you're purchasing this as a starter set, then you probably don't have access to the actual player's handbook. Maybe you're literally getting this as your first thing. Then having these as player handout cards is very useful because this is how you can look up spells without having to then open another website and looking them up there. And obviously you can do that, but having the card is still nice. And some of them have artwork, and you can, I believe these are default to show to everybody's journal, so everybody has these spells they can look at and just reference that. So that's actually a pretty cool thing. I've never seen that before. I think because everybody just uses the compendium, but because it's a starter set, it is nice to actually, I think, have these spells here. And this is not a complete spell list by any means. These are only the spells, because you have the pre-made character sheets, these are only the spells that are already built into those character sheets. So if you add any new spells or if you level up or anything, none of those are going to be in here. These are just going to be those spells. But it covers, because the pre-made characters are level 3, you do get up to, I believe, second level spells in here. So there's a pretty good variety, over 50 of them. You also get 10 magic item handouts. Only a couple have artwork, but they are there. And this is unlike the spells, these are pretty standard for Roll20 modules. It also includes over 20 monster sheets with artwork and matching player handouts, which is pretty standard. And I realized pretty quickly this is literally just copy and pasted from the Lost Mine starter set. I think it's just called the D&D starter set, but I'm referring to it now as the Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set. Literally, this is the exact same. I'm pretty sure, I'm like 90% sure this is like copy and paste because it's got Flame Skull, the Doppelganger. I'm recognizing all these creatures, Twigblight, Green Dragon, that appear in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So they just copy and pasted them over, even though my calculations, only 8 of them are actually used in the Hunt for the Thessal Hydra adventure here in the Stranger Things. So that might be a little confusing as a new person, because you're on here because of the starter set, and you're wondering, wow, there's goblins and hobgoblins and zombies and a green dragon. This is all in the adventure? No, it's not. These are just included here because I think it's literally just copy and pasted from the Lost Mine of Phandelver, so only a fraction of these are actually used. But I'm not going to complain because you get just bonus monsters, I guess, so that's good. All of these have handouts which you can show your players. Only a few of them have the really cool. There's a neat aesthetic here where they're trying to make it like, it's literally the boys playing D&D together, and this is Mike Wheeler's adventure that he's written. He's the DM, and it's supposed to be like his drawings for the maps and the creatures. Unfortunately, only very few of them actually have his drawings, but I think they're really good, the ones that are here. This troglodyte is really, really good looking. The Thessal Hydra looks amazing. I really wish all of the monsters that were featured in the adventure had this art, but they do not. Instead, most of them have just the generic D&D artwork. The only ones that do have the cool Mike Wheeler art, whoever actually drew these, the Troglodyte, the Thessal Hydra, and the Demogorgon. There is also an NPC which has two NPCs that you meet, the Lost Knight and the Proud Princess, that have that nice little artwork too. They're not actually monsters you're supposed to fight, but they have that neat little hand-drawn. I think it looks really good and really brings everything together. And I like that concept of the hand-drawn look. But I will say the maps, although for the adventure, the two maps, they have the that black and white graph paper aesthetic, but Roll20 actually did them as a full color detailed art map, which is awesome. So the maps actually look, there's only two battle maps, but they both look really, really good while still keeping like that hand-drawn aesthetic. So it's literally like they took this graph paper look, which I like this design, and I think that does fit with the whole, like, you're playing, their adventure, but the map itself looks way better. And let's go ahead and jump into that, because I'm not going to go over the starter set part of it. Like, it's got all the rules there to play D&D. They're spread out in a couple chapters. I just kind of quickly went over them. There's a how to play section. The artwork is kind of nice throughout. You do get some cool artwork from the actual show. You can see here, I think from both seasons, which is really nice. Again, I'm recording this. Season 3 is about 2 weeks away. So Stranger Things, obviously this is a good release window for it, because we're starting to ramp up with Stranger Things excitement again. But I do like the artwork that's included here, obviously from the show. Otherwise, it's the exact same material from the standard rules document / starter kit stuff. So I'm not going to go over that right now, but you do get all the rules in there for everybody to look at, and it's all organized pretty well in your journal. So what I will go over is the adventure, because I think that's what people are going to be most excited and interested in when deciding if the Stranger Things starter set is worth their time. The adventure is called The Hunt for the Thessal Hydra, which I believe is based on the original adventure that the boys play in the Stranger Things opening episode. I think that's the only time they actually played D&D, sadly enough, because obviously things get a little crazy and they don't have time anymore. The story is very straightforward. They meet with this Sir Tristan character, who actually gives them a good chunk of equipment. 2 bags of holding, a ring of protection and a potion of healing for each, a wand of magic missiles, and 1 unique magic item called Winter's Dark Bite, which is a great sword. +1 great sword. Against the Thessal Hydra, it's a +3, and while in the Upside Down, it works as a +4. That is insanely powerful. So much so that it's going to make whoever is wielding this great sword a lot stronger, which is going to be either the Paladin or the Ranger, it looks like. That's way, way stronger, but that gives them a chance, I guess. The adventure is to go hunt down the Thessal Hydra. That's pretty much the whole thing. They're just sent to go do that. They arrive. There are a few encounters you can have on the road, either actually fighting or NPCs. I do like the way that it's written in terms of it's like Mike writing the notes to himself. So he's saying, like, some NPCs have useful info and others are just distractions. Make sure the scenes are fun or the group might ignore them, especially Lucas. He'll want to be all business. That's really cool. I wish there was even more of that written in the adventure. But as is, I really like that that's that extra flavoring, that it's literally like Mike writing notes. And they're actually good notes. Like, that is a good note to have for DM, is like, when doing random encounters, hey, make sure everybody's into it and enjoying it. Otherwise, move things along and keep the story going, and use the players to build on them. So I like that advice is there, and also that it's very flavored to being the boys playing through that classic D&D tabletop adventure. That's really cool. Map number 1, which I guess we can look at the token page for a second. This is, again, very, very standard. If you've seen any of my Roll20 reviews or purchased any of the modules yourself, you get an alphabetized token page. And this, you can always drag a token onto the board to make your own token, like that I just did. And it's always got the hit points and armor class already set in there. Or you can take one of these and copy and paste it from the token page. That's a really easy way to build the adventure. But you don't even need to do that, because the battle maps are already pre-done. In terms of the tokens on the board and the dynamic lighting on the board, you can see these troglodytes. They look really, really good with that black and white. Now, this is the 10-foot square battle map with the 5-foot subdivisions, which I think that's the right way to adapt a 10-foot grid map. The unfortunate thing is you have to zoom in to make it look a little better, but because it's a pretty decent resolution, it doesn't look too bad having it be zoomed in. But you can see what I mean. I love that Roll20, I assume Roll20 did this. I don't know if this I think this is what it actually looks like in the adventure, which is here. And if this were the map, I'd be like, okay, that's fun, but it's too bad that it looks really nasty to actually play on. in Roll20 purposes, and then Roll20 like solved it perfectly by using that as the base map and then adding just some color, just a little bit of color and detail, and it made everything look so much better. So huge thumbs up for how good these maps look while still looking like a hand-drawn map. It just looks like somebody added, color and paint to it, basically. So I think that looks really good. Everything is annotated. This is on the GM layer, so your players don't see these actual numbers, but you see them so that you can see basically what each room is supposed to be. The one thing you don't get here that most adventures do is have like a part of the text that you're supposed to read aloud. This one doesn't really do that at all for some reason. It just has a little bit of notes on where things are. So there's trapped hallways where hallways will collapse. There's treasure rooms. There's troglodytes that will flee from one room into another. In fact, the players can actually talk to a troglodyte elder to try and get out of fighting, which is nice that that's always an option if players realize that. Or they can just murder hobo their way through all these troglodytes if they wish. They do start at level 3, which is nice. It's funny as a starter set to start at level 3. That's almost like D&D just admitting, like, look, even we know these low levels are just bullshit. All of the published adventures try to fast track you through the low levels as fast as possible because they suck. And third levels, when you finally start getting into your own and your classes start really unlocking into some cool areas, everybody starts becoming, there's certain archetypes of their classes. So this adventure allows you to do a little bit more as a starter set, even though it's short, but the fact that you start at third level allows you to throw a lot more danger and interesting elements at the players. You've got a lot more traps, you've got a lot more monsters, there's a sleeping owl bear in a cave, there's a giant frog that's going to pop out of the water. Eventually they make their way toward the upper part of this dungeon, which is the Cursed Labyrinth, and this is sort of half a battle map and just kind of a series of encounters. It's actually done similar to how Dung Rung Lung is set up in the Tomb of Annihilation adventure, where the map is there, but you're not really using it's hard to do a maze in a physical battle map when you really want to get the feeling of your players getting turned around and lost and having encounters. And you do that through skill checks and random encounters instead of literally just following like a placemat style maze. So it said it said to go ahead and start on this map if you want. You can see the dynamic lighting is all filled out here. But eventually you want to move on to just kind of abstracting it into various encounters, the Cursed Labyrinth section. And it's mainly just a bunch of random encounters. You can actually roll to see if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty. I probably wouldn't even get this specific about it if I were running this. I wouldn't say, okay, you go this direction. I would describe it, but I wouldn't sit here and roll and see where the players are, unless they want to get into it. Maybe they want to map it out and try to figure it out, in which case it's a lot harder for you as a DM. But eventually, you as a DM just decide what kind of encounters you want and how much fun the players are having. They're supposed to have this Lost Knight encounter, which I don't know if this is supposed to represent Will or not. I don't think it is. Because I don't believe he's supposed to be a knight at all. But you find him, and he gives you a series of riddles, which is a nice change of pace, because normally this is just a hardcore combat dungeon crawl, so I enjoy that you do get some riddle opportunities here. One of them is actually based on nursery rhyme, which can be really clever for the players. But it's meant to be just a series of skill checks / just logic puzzles the players can work through, which I think is really fun. After that, they actually journey into the Upside Down, which is obviously a major place from the Stranger Things mythology. And here they're not really, there's no map, which is probably good because it's hard to map the Upside Down. Or you're supposed to describe it as just a scary place, but there's not really any encounters. The one encounter you have is with the Proud Princess, which is obviously supposed to represent 11, I'm pretty sure. And she tells you that you need to get the blood of the Demogorgon in order to escape the Upside Down and finish tracking the Thessal Hydra. So you're supposed to cut your palm, but it says there's other ways you can get by it. You do that, and you summon the Demogorgon, and you have a fight. Now, the weird thing about the Demogorgon is it's kind of a joke in the series. Obviously, the Demogorgon is a real demonic creature in the Forgotten Realms lore that I believe the player, Mike and the boys use correctly when they put that mini on the board. But they just kind of call the creature of Stranger Things a Demogorgon. That's kind of the joke, is they don't have a name for it, so they just call it that because it's a big scary monster and kind of the last thing that they ended up fighting. So what's weird is D&D actually then created a monster based on the Stranger Things monster named it the Demogorgon based on the fact that the boys call it the Demogorgon in the show, but in D&D, the Demogorgon is a real monster. So I don't know. There's a weird like level of back and forth there, but in any case, the Demogorgon in the show version is the classic creature from the cover page. Uh, that guy with the flower of teeth bursting out. CR4 seems like a cool boss fight. You don't actually have to take him down. You just need to get his blood a little bit, but after you get that, you're good to go. And after that, you teleport back to the, I guess, back to your world and quickly get back on the trail to the Thessal Hydra, which leads to the other battle map, which is pretty much just a boss encounter. There's a few other things in here that you can do. So what's crazy is that Demogorgon is not actually the boss of this adventure. It's kind of just a mini boss. You're actually still on your way to killing the Thessal Hydra. This is the actual boss encounter. There's a few spiders here, there's troglodytes, but ultimately you're meant to just fight this big Thessal Hydra, which is another CR4 encounter. So you've got multiple cool boss handouts. I love this artwork. That looks so cool. That so looks like a freaking 12-year-old boy drew that. I love it. With legendary actions, by the way. So just a classic. So it's just a really classic kind of dungeon crawl, although it still manages to fit in the Upside Down and the Demogorgon without shoehorning it in. And it still feels organic when you go through all these things. So in terms of hitting all those beats, I think it does a pretty good job, and it really doesn't try to just bloat the adventure too much. It says, all right, we are just going to run this very simple Thessal Hydra adventure that was set up in the show, and we're going to have the Demogorgon attack, and then you're going to end up fighting the Thessal Hydra, you're going to go to the Upside Down, all these things, and that's all you're going to do. That's really all it is. And the notes on the beginning say, this should be completed in one evening, according to Mike. That's bullshit to anybody who's played D&D and knows how long combat alone takes. Like these two boss battles, the Thessal Hydra and the Demogorgon, those could easily be session-long fights if you let them be, or at least half a session alone. So you're looking at probably, 2 to 4 sessions total, which I would put Lost Mine of Fendelver at somewhere between like 15 and 20 sessions, depending on how, obviously long your sessions are. We play like 3-hour sessions, and some folks play, 4-hour or 2-hour, whatever else. So it kind of changes, but it is way, way shorter. It's like a fraction of the size. I mean, you're starting at 3rd level. You're not really meant to level up, although it does have the notes in there for the characters to level up to 5. I don't see how or why you would want to level anybody up beyond that, but that's pretty much the whole adventure. I think it's fine. It's just very, very simple and straightforward. That's what you're going to get out of it. I don't know if the purchasing this module is worth this adventure alone. I think it is. If you're all hardcore Stranger Things fans and you're into a combat-heavy adventure with pre-made characters, I think that could work very well for you. Otherwise, if you're just a bunch of D&D fans if you're already well versed in D&D, who also like Stranger Things, maybe you can just look up the Thessal Hydra stat block and Demogorgon stat block and go from there. I don't know if it's worth having these. I think it's a nice adventure. It's a nice adventure. It's just hard to recommend it as a starter set when you already have the very, very good Lost Mine of Fendelver starter set, and I believe now it's. I don't know if the Roll20 module price probably hasn't come down, but the physical one I know has come down in price recently. The other thing I want to go over is the character sheets. As I said, they start at level 3. These are not the same characters from the starter set of Fendelver, by the way. Those had, I believe, 2 like human fighters and like a halfling rogue, like very, very typical, elf wizard, very stereotypical fantasy adventuring party. This one has like a dwarf bard and a half-orc ranger. It's a lot different and unique. I like it. I like that it's not just. I like that they didn't just take the starter set heroes and leveled them up to 3 and said, okay, here's your heroes. These are actually new, interesting heroes that feel like they are their own heroes. The one thing they don't have, which Fendelver does very well, is build the heroes into the adventure. Now, this one doesn't have much of an adventure to build on anyway. There's really not very much role-playing at all, other than the few NPCs you meet. But they don't have anything here. They're just supposed to be blank, and you're supposed to insert your own, personality traits and flaws and all that stuff in there. So they don't have any of that set up. But as pre-made character sheets, I think they are a lot more interesting. Like a half-orc ranger and an elf cleric. Like these are all different than what we usually see from the starter set. So I like that they are there. They're also built in with the character monster, which is a really cool tool on Roll20 that you can use to level people up. I think I had a copy of this open in case you haven't seen this yet. And this is standard for any Roll20 module, but it just makes, in fact, I've got it open right here. It just makes leveling up a lot easier. Or for creating new characters, but the new thing they added recently, it was just for new characters, but now you can actually launch it to level characters up, which is really cool. And you can even roll hit points or just take the average, and then it automatically detects, alright, based on what you're doing, what do you get at your next level, and we'll go ahead and plug all that in. You can choose what you want. If we want 2 more wisdom for a cleric, we can choose all these new spells. Everything is just built into the character sheet, which looks really, really cool and works very well. So this is a standard thing in everything. This is not unique to the starter set, but to Stranger Things, but because this is the starter set and these have the pre-made sheets, it's well worth mentioning that they do use all the character monster stuff, which is cool to see. But yeah, that's pretty much the Stranger Things Roll20 starter set. Let's go over my pros and cons. Pros: the starter set includes everything you need to start playing D&D, obviously, but it is there. It's got essentially all of the same starter set material from Phandelver. It's just the only thing that's different is the actual adventure, but all the information there on how to play is there, and it's just as good as it was in Lost Mine and Phandelver. They do a really great job of just breaking down exactly like what is D&D, how do you play D&D, how does the D20 system work, how does combat work, and then how does general like adventuring work. And spellcasting is just, it parses all the very useful stuff that you need from the player's handbook, and I think a bit from the Dungeon Master's Guide, and makes it very easy to read. And the journal system works really well for Roll20 in terms of breaking that stuff up. Pro: the Hunt for the Thessal Hydra is simple to run and provides some fun Stranger Things flavoring. Especially because as a starter set adventure, obviously you want it to be easy to run on the DM side, and I believe it very much is that. And because it's got the Upside Down, and the Demogorgon, and Thessal Hydra, and it's got all these little notes from Mike and all that, it's got a lot of the really cool Stranger Things flavoring, which makes it fun and Stranger Thingsy. Pro: the maps have color while still looking hand-drawn. Really, really great maps. You only get 2 of them, but you only really need 2 of them. It's basically 2 mini dungeon crawls back-to-back. The Upside Down, it's really just the one Demogorgon fight. Otherwise, it's a system of just encounters. And same thing with the Labyrinth. It's just random encounters, which you could use this random battle map for, just to do the encounters themselves. But I think both these maps look really well, and I'm so glad that we got actual color maps while still keeping the aesthetic of the hand-drawn design. I think that works wonderfully. And pros: I like the starter set heroes. They're atypical. They include a dwarf bard and a half-orc ranger. I like that they didn't just take the starter set heroes from the Phandelver pack and level them up to 3. It looks like they took all new hero types and ones that we don't usually see in D&D. So I like that very much because, again, if you're using a starter set, a big fun of D&D is obviously making your character, but if you really just want to jump into the play without having to go through the motion of creating a character, then having those pre-made characters are very nice to have, and they've even got the tokens built in and everything ready to go, so you can just jump right in. Cons: the adventure is very short and simple, and is just pretty much a dungeon crawl. I mentioned that as a pro that it's simple to run, but the fact that it's also just plays out very, very simple. It's a straightforward, there's not really any plot per se. It's just, you're just hunting this creature, and then, you're along on your path, things happen. It's pretty much it. You meet a couple NPCs that can help you, the Lost Knight and the Proud Princess. Otherwise, you're just fighting a bunch of monsters, and you eventually make your way and kill the creature. So, you're not going to get a whole lot of the role-playing, flavoring, and the storytelling aspect. You're really going to get more of the... And maybe that's part of the idea, is because, if you're an 11-year-old group of boys playing D&D, you're probably in it more for the Diablo-style hack and slash than you are for, like, the, mature, like, Game of Thrones-style politicking and storytelling and betrayals and twists and things there. So that's probably in keeping with the theme of it, but it's still way, way, way shorter and less detailed and less involved than Lost Mine of Phandelver. And I keep having to make that comparison because that is the other starter set that you're looking at. So it's a bit tricky. And then the other, and that bleeds right directly into my other con, is that as a starter set, this falls well short of the original Lost Mine of Phandelver in terms of the main difference is the adventure itself, and the adventure is way shorter and less detailed. There's less monsters, there's less maps, there's less everything. So the nice thing is the price does reflect that on Roll20. It's cheaper than Phandelver, so I do like that. But ultimately, definitely not as good as Phandelver. And that will bleed into my final verdict. A competent starter kit with some fun Stranger Things elements, but it pales in comparison to the original 2014 5e starter kit. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.